So killer. And I'm glad I love Here Again, but I'm glad I started with that. That because look, another thing about that too, think about this. What you just heard there was a band that had been doing it for 40 years already. I mean, really? A band still sounding that good on a record that came out, a few years ago? What year was Clockwork Angels, Ed?
Oh.
20...
That was 2012, right?
Was it that long ago? It could be. Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Time is flying, man. Really? 6 years ago already?
I always loved the steampunk aspects of that record.
Man, that's crazy. That's long, but still stands as the final Rush studio album and likely will be. And look at what that band is sounding like after all those years, still sounding that good. And what I love so much about it and why it was important for me to include something from Clockwork is because it's amazing. They were getting back to that, and they had been for a little while, getting back to that real powerful guitar, bass, drums vibe. There's like hardly any keys on that track. It's back to that groove and that power, which I love so much about Rush. All right, so that's number 20, Caravan from Clockwork. At number 19 from Rush, I've always said Rush has done a ton of live albums. And the favorite of mine still is the very first one, All the World's a Stage from 1976. As a matter of fact, when I was in Toronto for this radio show, I don't know, maybe a year ago, I went up there, I interviewed Bob Ezrin and Triumph. I went out to dinner with Andy Curran, who is a guy that works for Rush's organization. And he was driving me back to the hotel, and I went past Massey Hall. And I was like, whoa, that's the place, which is where All the World's a Stage was recorded. So I went out, took a picture of the sign and all that. So for me, All the World's a Stage is just raw, phenomenal Rush at its best. Now, I didn't designate on this, Ed, the live version, because to me, either is fine. So I'm fine with whatever one you want to roll with. But Bastille Day, which of course is the opening track also on Caress of Steel, the third Rush album, is my number 19 track. And look, Rush had a huge impact on so many metal bands. Everyone from Anthrax to Skid Row have covered Rush songs. And there was a lot of metallic qualities to early Rush. And I love each and every one of those metallic qualities. So at 19 on the Trunk Top 20 Rush songs from Caress of Steel, an album that, I mean, has some really out there stuff on it. Fountain of Lamneth at 20 minutes long.
Oh, the Necromancer.
Necromancer.
I think I'm going bald.
Just unreal. That's your second track is I Think I'm Going Bald. But at number 19, the opening track from Rush's third album from 1976, I believe, or 5. This is Bastille Day. Guillotine, bloody. I was a kid. I was out of my mind with that. And that's the opening track on the live album with the great intro. Will you please welcome home Rush? Can you play a little of that, Ed? It's a different album. Maybe it doesn't count. Just the intro piece. Do you have All the World to Say? Intro. I've come to love it. But it's just, it's just like he's almost just kind of running out. Really like, oh, won't you please welcome home Rush? Greatness. Bastille Day at 19. Opening track on my favorite live album from them, and also opening track from third studio album, Caress of Steel. At 18, we are going to go for the live version of this one. I did designate this as the live version. From All the World's a Stage, the studio version of which appears on the second Rush album, Fly By Night. But I always loved the live version. There's a vibe about the live version that I don't think is captured as much on Fly By Night. And again, a very deep track here, but I always loved this song. I thought it was sort of an under the radar Rush sleeper classic, if you will. The way the song starts with Geddy just kind of singing over soft open, and then when the riff kicks in, again on the live version, just killer. I mean, just massive guitar. And there's just a vibe to the live version when the crowd kicks in and the guitar kicks in. That is one of my favorite things on All the World's a Stage. So the song is In the End. Original version on Fly By Night, live version from All the World's a Stage. And it is my number 18 on the Trunk Top 20. Ed, I don't know where you want to take this from, because I'd love for people to hear when the riff kicks in and a little bit of the soft out. I don't know what we can do or where we can do it, but I'll leave it to you. Bedroom, man, for real. Damn it. Damn our digital laws. I want to hear the whole 7 minutes, man.
Damn you all to
Damn
hell.
you all to hell.
You blew it up.
But you get the idea. I mean, if you're a Rush fan and if you're listening to this, God knows you got to be. That was just so powerful and still is. It still is. The enormity of that guitar sound. Nah, 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 and the crowd rises up. And then Geddy's voice up there. I mean, just, that's why I went with the live one on that. I love, love, love that track and that version of that track. In the End, live version from All the World's a Stage. So far, we've got our honorable mention of Here Again. We've got Caravan at 20 from Clockwork Angels. We've got Bastille Day at 19. We've got In the End, live version right there at 18. Moving along on the Rush Trunk Top 20, we again stay in the early 70s, early to mid 70s here. I make no apologies for the fact that that is my favorite era of Rush. And again, we go to the very, very first Rush album, featuring the late John Rutsey on drums. This was before Neil Peart was part of the band. The only record that does not feature Neil Peart from Rush is the first record. Rush at that time, a very Zeppelin-esque, riff-driven, way more basic guitar-based drums rock band. And there are a lot of people that feel, well, Rush didn't really become Rush until Neil came in, and that's all well and good. And the contribution and the arrival of Neil, there's no way it can be overstated. I mean, everything changed. The quality of the drumming, with all due respect to Rutsey, obviously Neil's one of the greats of all time, and obviously the writing and the direction. And the fact that Neil is the lyricist in the band. So, of course, the change is going to be monumental. It wasn't just a new drummer coming in that happened to be phenomenal. It was a guy that was also going to have his imprints all over Rush and take over writing the lyrics and the concepts. A massive, maybe, I mean, without question, if you look throughout rock history, one of the biggest lineup changes that had maybe one of the biggest impacts ever in terms of contribution. So because of that, I think there are a lot of people that sometimes look at that first Rush album and really kind of diminish it a little bit. Neil wasn't there yet, and they weren't fully realized, and they weren't what they would once become. But here's the other thing about this. Before this record was made, before Rush released their first record, they had existed for years in Canada. They played clubs, they played parties with Rutsey in the band. So it wasn't like they just formed and got a record deal. The songs and the performance that make up the very first album was all stuff that had been crafted and honed for years before they finally got a deal and got in the studio. So I think that the material on the first Rush album is great. And as are the performances. Are they the musicians they would later become yet? No, obviously Neil is not there yet. Did it get into the proggy land that they would be known for? No. Did the subject matter evolve? No. But for a meat and potatoes hard rock band, which is what they were and was featured on that first record, it's a great record. It's a great record. It's among my favorite Rush records. So we're going to go to that record right now with the song that opens it. And here it is, Finding My Way. Just Ed will have to move in a little because it builds up on the record.